Welcome to the Pantheon Plus Rewind.
Hello again, everyone. We're back and better than ever with episode number 101 of the Pantheon Plus Rewind, the usually weekly podcast covering Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, the in-development MMORPG by Visionary Realms, with a huge focus on community and conversation. So this week, we've got some catching up to do. We have two massive official updates to go over. Last week's developer livestream and the previous week's developer roundtable, which both gave us massive info drops that we just have to talk about, and including some excellent lore bits at the end. So, grab your cloak and walking stick. We're about to set foot on a brand new adventure. Come with me, Desrin, and my storied co-host, Theric, as we take you along for this week's Rewind. So, Theric, how was your vacation, man?
It was really, really good. I got to tell you, I don't turn everything off often enough. And when I say turn everything off, I mean no computer, no devices, no social media, nothing. Basically, I was like 3 days kind of disconnected from everything, and it kind of felt good. Like we're all about connection and we're all about community here, but I got to tell you, sometimes, you just need a little bit of a disconnect. And it was really good. Your little comment about the walking stick in the intro made me think of it fondly again, because I was out hiking with my wife. We went to, we've got a cottage, and we went and hiked around for a while and just sort of took it easy, just chilled out. And, the weather was nice. And despite Redbeard Flynn's attempts to get me eaten by a bear, I successfully did not. So I'm very happy with that. But yeah, no, it was really refreshing, actually. So I'm definitely feeling like the well's been filled up again, and I'm ready to get back at it with you. How are you doing? How was your week with no rewind?
Well, I've been busy on some things, but some things. yeah, we might get to that later. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I've just been busy, honestly. There's been plenty of Pantheon stuff going down, and I'm getting some other real life things situated. So going somewhere, like that's kind of how I feel.
Good to hear, man. Good to hear.
Yeah. Well, you know what else is going somewhere? Our episode 100 adventuring party. Holy cow.
This is no party. This is almost like a 24-person raid. This is the biggest group we've ever had, to be honest. And just so you out there, everybody knows, unbelievable the amount of people that showed up and threw down for the adventuring party in episode 100. So I challenge, Desrin, you are the unlucky one who gets to read this long list this week, or maybe the lucky one, depending on how you look at it. But somebody asked me if you're going to do it in one breath, and I said I don't think you can do it. So
I don't think I could do it in one breath. I don't have the lungs for that, but no. I'll try to get through it in the most clean way as possible. We'll see how many mistakes I make this time.
All right, I'm ready.
All right, good old episode 100's raid party coming up. We've got Ziplocs on the Darkmer Rogue, Sparrow on the Elf Ranger, Bounty Code on the Human Wizard, Screech on the Scar Bard, Wiki Woo on the Human Enchanter, Shuriken on the Dwarf Cleric, Horsosaurus on the Human Warrior, Brian Reck on the Gnome Summoner, Theldrin on the Archai Warrior, Daimlos on the Darkmer Cleric, Donler on the Human Warrior, Man of Rohan on the Ember Elf Ranger, Big Badass Ninja 1 on the Gnome, Jason on the Scar Beard Lord, Bit Crunch on the Ashen Elf Shaman, Dave Bowers on the Human Cleric, Wizen on the Ashen Elf Wizard, Rob Weinzerl on the Gnome Enchanter, Robert Edbaum on the Ember Elf Ranger, and Zerg Jerk on the Dwarf Rogue. Oh, I almost got it. Almost.
You were so close. I even tried to mess with you a little there, because Big Badass Ninja 1 said Gnome and then didn't give a class to go along with the race. So I just chose Gnome. I just chose Gnome, and that's what they are.
That's enough.
And yeah, you did that really, really well. You really nailed it.
Whew. Well, I mean, that was worth nailing. Like, you guys really went above and beyond for that episode 100. Absolutely blown away. I mean, we have, without a doubt, the full raid force this week, ready to take on anything that comes our way. But
Totally.
you guys are insane. I mean, like, incredible, you know? So if you'd like to help out and join the adventuring party, feel free to drop a super chat donation during the YouTube premiere or check out our Patreon for a more permanent seat on the party/raid. But again, thank you so much, guys. You're the driving force behind our content in so many ways, and I can't wait to do even greater things with this community, right?
100%, man. It was a major. I walked away from episode 100 feeling so great about everything and the situation and just like where we're at with the show, and it really felt like the milestone it was meant to be. So thank you everyone for making that feeling, come through so strongly.
Yeah, I echo the same thing. Same thing. I'm like refreshed, like so just ready. I'm ready. Episode 101 is the first step, right? So
it's the first step. Let's start the walk.
Let's start the walk.
This week in Visionary Realms news and notes. Okay, so where to start? Well, we've got a monthly dev live stream from this past Thursday, May 12th. VR called it Answers, Lore, Updates, and More, which has a nice ring to it.
It does.
And then we've also got the last developer roundtable that we was on the Friday of the last week that we didn't have a show. So we're going to cover that. That was all about crafting in Pantheon, featuring their lead crafting developer, designer, David Nefel Beach. And that came out to the public on May 6th. So we have lots of ground to cover here. So let's get going with it and briefly recap the dev stream. We got Minus and Ronick teaming up again to not only inform but entertain with some creative new segments and some bumpers. And everybody loves a good bumper. But they kicked it off with their burning questions. And you know what? I'm going to dare say that the burning could be felt by everyone, with them sort of poking the bear a little bit, having a little fun with the first one and asking, when is alpha? And, there was a lot of news in this dev stream, but I want to talk about this for a minute here because we did talk about it on the Pantheon Plus U, but, it's had some time to sit and sort of marinate and reflect on it a little bit now. And then so that when they asked that question, they sort of made a joke about it and sort of moved on quickly without answering. And we gave our reactions on the stream, and I don't know how you feel about the humor how this landed for you, in the comments. Let us know, because we had differing takes on the show afterwards and thinking about it. You and me and Nathan and Drac all had sort of a different, how did it hit you? That was the question we were trying to answer. And I said I wasn't comfortable with it for a few reasons. And we had some good discussions about, what the pros and cons of making that kind of a joke are. But, now, like I said, having some time to think about it, I've actually come to realize that I think this might be the biggest news from this update. And the reason is that there's a couple things. Firstly, we had, as usual, some VR staff in the Twitch chat during Pantheon Plus U, and we got a couple comments, and one from Ronick that really made a lot of sense to me. Here's what Ronick said. He said, "Here's the thing: if we didn't believe, Alpha was on the horizon, would we joke about it?" And that's a really good point. And then Joppa also added on to that, saying, we realize, or do you realize how many people are going to jump in Alpha when the time comes? And there's really no way for us to actually be prepared for that kind of a turnout. So taking both of those things into account, I don't think they would make a joke if they weren't ready to, if Alpha wasn't imminent, to use Joppa's word. And honestly, when I made that connection, I felt better about it, because, they can taunt the community with Alpha jokes. They certainly can. This is their most widely viewed medium, their developer monthly live stream on Twitch. It clearly, 300, 400 some odd people watching at the time, and then more people that watch it afterwards. It leaves a little doubt in my mind that they wouldn't make this joke if Alpha wasn't coming in 2022. And you and I have been on differing ends of the spectrum with regard to whether we believe that's happening or not. I've said I was, and that I've gotten a little nervous. I'm kind of back on the firmly belief again that it is going to be happening in 2022 because of this stream. So I could be wrong. Things can change, all that. But, this stream would really take on a much more, and I'll say flippant tone if they don't get there this year. And I think that's where I've sort of settled after having some time to reflect on it. And I respect, what Nathan Napalm and what Drac and what you said when we were on stream. And I've taken all that into account. So, has that happened for you, Des? Has anything changed? Have you 24 hours or however many hours it's been, since the stream was, to reflect on this a little bit at all?
I mean, honestly, no, not at all.
Right.
I don't want to be a buzzkill, but I'm not going to dig through like the comments, like the one you mentioned with Ronik, and try to like look for a meaning behind that. I got to look at what we have, and we've got a roadmap that, while it's it's moving forward, it's not even close to on pace for a 2022 alpha. We've in the Q&A section, the burning question. So we did get a brief update on Vinyl, just to say that it's in the process of being put on their development server, which is as in it's not even really quite ready for their internal QA builds. So it seems like there's really no chance that this is even going to be playable for pre-alpha testing for at least another month, if not more, which I think is totally longer than was expected or what seemed to be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that part of it for sure. Like I can see why you'd say, like, we're coming up on June, right? Yeah. So we're halfway through the year if you look at it that way. But then again, maybe, if it's done in June and then they get some pre-alpha testing going in there, I still, you look at a fall, maybe, September, October, November kind of deal. I still think that there's a potential that they could get enough testing in for a pre-alpha session, for a potential late fall alpha launch, perhaps.
I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if I think like VR is going to be able to finish up the 10 in progress items on their roadmap. Like, I mean, not to mention the other 11 items that either haven't even been started yet or are, currently on hold for whatever reason. I mean, 7 months, man? No. I mean, like, as I have to say, because to be clear, not all the items on the roadmap are equal. So it's not really just about the number, but there's huge things like perception still not even in progress. And like, we're sitting at 3 of 24 items complete as of April. So, we got to see what the next newsletter comes up with, but that's where we're at.
That's a really good point. I mean, and that's, I think what I'm keying in on more is that, like you said, not all those items are created equal, and nothing is bigger than the Vinyl implementation, right? We've talked about that a lot in terms of just the magnitude of what needs to get done. And, that's not to say as well, of course, the roadmap is a fluid document. It could change, they can make adjustments to it. They can, ideally that's not what's going to happen. But on the other hand, I think that they have the confidence to make this kind of a, to sort of tease us a little bit with this, that they look at those items on the roadmap themselves and say, we can get this done. Like they look at that and they assess what each one requires, how much time each one is going to require. And I think that there's still an optimism from the VR team that this is a reality.
Yeah. I mean, I would say bookmark this. And, if I'm wrong, I will happily do some, I don't know, random, I almost said eat a sock, but I think too many people have done that. And I'll do something ridiculous, like some crazy cosplay you guys can think of. But,
oh man, I'm in for this. Okay, now, somebody.
But yeah, if they make that 2022, sure. But again, all Ronik said was that it's on the horizon, and we've heard imminence, horizon, all these terms, and what the horizon is for them, I just don't think is what it is for the people following the game. And so while they might be excited, they might be confident, whatever, like, it just doesn't translate to reality for a lot of people, given their history. You can kind of you can only take sentiment so far, man.
What do you mean by history, though? I'm curious of what you mean by that.
So, not just to say the whole like, oh, it's been 8 years kind of a thing, but like they've missed deadlines, like or not deadlines, but they've kind of put the idea out that, hey, this thing is soon. That's why the meme is out there, right? And we all know at this point that soon isn't soon. And for some people it's still just a joke, but for some people it stings. So it's like not to come down super hard on VR, but the reality is that this project was started a long time ago. And while we know all those ups and downs and we have a ton of grace and patience for them that I feel like we've really demonstrated for years, again, they've missed pretty much every even vague deadline.
But what deadlines? What exact deadlines are you talking about, though?
I shouldn't say deadline. I should say the notions of what's to come, milestones maybe, because the end of 2022 alpha is even a stretch out of what was expected previously, and their vagueness kind of saves them in a certain sense, but in another sense, it doesn't really feel good for a lot of people. And so I feel like a lot of people are starting to feel like they're kind of getting strung along, and to make a joke about that, it might be funny for like diehard fans. And I thought it was funny. Like if this was just between me and them, I would be laughing. But I think the takeaway for a lot of people isn't confidence. It is flippancy. I think it makes VR look like they don't take timelines seriously, even though I know for a fact they do. It just seems really like an unnecessary thing to put in a video like this. It's just not worth it to me. Sorry for the full like Desrin rant, I guess, but it's just
no.
I
totally get where you're coming from, because I had that thought process as well. And honestly, like what I'm saying is like, if they don't get there this year, then yeah, this is a huge, it's a slap in the face, if they don't get there this year.
Right.
Or if it's not, if it's not happening, because you can't make jokes about it. Like it's the only thing that you really can't make a joke about, like,
I mean, anyone in the VIP community knows we joke about this stuff all the time,
Right. And it, like you say, it, as an insider, it's fine, as somebody who's close with the community and we have these discussions every day of the week, amongst ourselves. But then you've got, people who are, like I said, this is their main media vehicle, right? Who see this and like, oh, is it supposed to be like a meme? Like, are they making their own meme about their inability to say when alpha will be? Like, I get that. So that I'm not disagreeing with you about that part. What I'm disagreeing, I guess, is about, missed deadlines. And the only deadline I can think of is, the sort of very infirm one that Chris Rowan gave, saying that they were pushing hard for alpha in 2021. Right? That one sticks with me because that's the CEO talking. And when the CEO speaks, to me, that carries weight. And everything else after that, until Joppa said, the word of 2022 is imminence, there's no deadlines in there. Like there's nothing in there that
right. And that's why I had to come back and say not deadlines, but milestones.
Milestones is a better way of looking. I like a better way of describing it, I think, because there's definitely been some milestones.
Yeah.
And the most obvious one and the most pressing one in our face is the network implementation, the vinyl implementation, right? So that's a huge milestone. Now they said, they gave a rough estimate 2 to 3 months to get this done. Started in February or March, and now we're, of course. I mean, it's May. What is the date we're recording here? May 12th, right? So it is what it is. It's not that far. It hasn't been stretched to the point of ridiculousness at this point. It's just we're looking for it, like we're expecting it to be, to be imminent.
Right.
We're expecting it to be done. So I understand what you're saying completely, and I'm not like, I just want our listeners to be understanding where we're at, that it's important for us to feel like we can be honest about how we feel without being, it's a joke, like they're done, what do they do? And they've made a huge mistake. Like that's not at all what we're saying. We're just trying to or at least I'll speak for myself. I'm trying to sort of think out loud, right? Process feelings out loud, right? So,
Right.
and I think that's what you're doing as well, if I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of VR, and if I haven't made that clear by now, I don't know what to do. But it doesn't mean
exactly
that I think everything that they do is perfect, and I feel like I'm not alone in the opinions for this dev stream. And if they if they didn't want feedback and didn't want input from the community, shouldn't it be a crowdfunded game, I guess? Because I think that's what really gets me about this whole thing is just that this is the most kind of public facing information. They put this YouTube video out. It gets a ton of views from people that don't follow closely, but there's a lot of people that have pledged. I would almost guarantee there's more people that have pledged for Pantheon that have either forgotten it exists or or don't even check up on it very often. That every once in a while they're going to come back and they're going to be like, "Hey, wonder what's going on with Pantheon. Oh, I remember here an alpha was supposed to be coming up around 2022." And then you check out this video and they're like, oh wow, they're joking about it. Okay.
Yeah, totally, exactly. That's 100% right. And you know what? I mean, you get an idea, you make a joke, and sometimes they land, sometimes they don't, and that's all fine and good. Except when it comes to something like this, like you got to be real. Like I said on stream, I wouldn't have felt comfortable making this kind of a joke. And self-awareness is great and being like, being able to poke fun at your own, your own issues or your own like things that you're known for, but do you really want to be known for this? Like, is that what you want to be known for? Like, I don't think so. Like don't make a joke about something. Don't make your game into your development process into a joke or it'll become a joke, right?
Right.
Like, keep it real, man.
I do not want to feed the trolls,
but I don't want to feed the trolls either. And I don't, I know that they, the indifference is worse than love or hate. It's, there's some truth in that. But on the other hand,
Yeah. And, we've dug into this a lot and, with respect to our viewers, definitely leave your comments. I am curious if maybe this is just a minority thing. Maybe most people just was like, oh yeah, it was funny. But definitely let us know. But we should probably not linger on this. There's much happier things to talk about for sure.
Yeah.
So
well, I did want to vent a little bit and voice our mutual thoughts on this because I think it's important. Anyway, so we'll move on. One of the items that we didn't talk about on Pantheon Plus U was the banking systems implementation that they talked about on this dev stream, which I think is pretty important. They said that implementation of that is currently underway, and their first prototype is close to testing. So Minus told us to expect an update on that in the newsletter during the alpha tracker coming up next week. So look for that. We all know how important it's going to be to bank your stuff because they did reiterate the corpse runs, the death penalty, basically saying, your equipped gear remains on you when you die. Everything, but all your bags and all your other items and your coin stays on your corpse. So you need to be banking that stuff, that sweet, sweet loot that you don't want to lose potentially. So banking needs to be functional in this game to be in a playable state, basically. So it's good to hear this is a priority. And I don't think it doesn't seem like something that's going to take a ton of time to do. I hope that they can get this thing, this one done, in a fairly reasonable rate. But nothing too crazy on this one, right, Des?
Yeah, I mean, banking, it as long as it does what we need it to do, right? But who knows? Exactly. Maybe they'll add a little bit of cool new flavor to it. But just knowing that it's underway, it's another thing on the checklist. So really happy. I'm actually really glad that they just kind of reconfirmed the state of the death penalty. I think that was just such a great decision to throw in here because, like they said, nothing's really changed, but getting to reiterate what was said. I mean, when's the last time they talked about death penalty? It was a long time, right? Like,
yeah.
So,
well, they're burning questions. I mean, the 9 burning questions that they answered, I wouldn't have said all of those were on the top of my
Yeah.
top burning questions, like, but this is definitely one of them. And this was one of the questions about the death penalty, if I'm not mistaken. There were some others that I was like, I don't know if that's really the most pressing one.
Holidays.
Yeah. Hey, I got something to say about that. That is going to be a lore video, man. No, I'll say it right now. It's fine. That's going to be a lore video. I was challenged by Minus saying, if you are a lore hound, you should know the lore holidays and tournaments. I'm like, okay, I can think of one. What other ones are you talking about? So I got to do some research. And if you want to know about the holidays and terminus, I'm here for you. I'm going to get that done.
Awesome.
But yeah, it wouldn't have been on my top 9 burning questions.
Oh, one last thing to note on the death penalty, though, is they did also confirm the durability loss as well. So not only are you going to drop a bunch of stuff and want to go back to get it, but there is a full penalty. And the durability loss, if it wasn't mentioned just a bit ago, it comes with XP loss. So it's a death penalty, it's a death penalty. Mm-hmm. And I believe in chat, Joppa also confirmed that getting a res actually gives you more of your XP back as well. So again,
yeah, he did. Yeah. Was it that way, or was it the other way around? Is getting your corpse back give you more XP than getting a res? Because
oh no. See, no, we didn't snapshot it here, but I'm pretty sure it's getting a res because if you think about it, then it's like more player interaction, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back and look in the chat to make sure I can confirm that, and then I'll pin that comment to the video so everybody can see it, because I feel like we should know that if we're going to comment on it. Yeah, it's all it is. Another one that was kind of a discussion point is they talked about the techniques mechanic that was recently introduced, actually. And basically, if you're not aware, this is an effect. It's basically a system that opens up weapon-specific abilities the more you use them. So the question was asked, will these apply to offhand items? So if you're, a magic user, things like orbs or books, that kind of thing. And Minus used the warrior as an example. He said, so not at the moment. This is not the way it is. There's no separate techniques for offhand items, but he did say there will be class-specific techniques for that. And he noted like a warrior will have skills that play into them having a shield in your offhand. He said, so techniques come off the main hand weapon. And he did offer one caveat, though, saying there may be some techniques that require a certain offhand weapon, using the example of a dagger, a technique that requires a dagger in your offhand. So I thought this was kind of interesting. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but Desrin, I'll turn it over to you first. Would you have any thoughts on this? Was there anything that sort of struck you with this new revelation, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, techniques are still kind of a fresh concept, right? Still pretty new. So it makes sense that this would be something folks want more clarity on. And so first off, I'm really glad that they grabbed this question. Now, I think having these kinds of requirements kind of makes sense, but it should probably be pretty rare. Like, and I speak to you need to have this offhand, right? I forget like the numbers on how many techniques they want to have or whatever, but I would imagine that that's probably a fairly rare occurrence. Just so it doesn't get too convoluted, right? Because if you get 5 techniques and 4 of them require a specific offhand, but
yeah, it becomes a little onerous, right?
Yeah, but I think the main point to kind of note here, and I guess reiterate, is that techniques are more than just kind of universal weapon skills like ESO and stuff like that. They're more often than not a mix of your class and your weapon type. So a warrior has certain techniques with a certain weapon. But yeah, I think leaving offhand weapons kind of out of the picture for now, it helps keep it simple, or easier to dive into, I guess, less convoluted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. You don't want to get into too much of a Venn diagram of your class and your weapon and your race, and then all these kinds of things that interact in some kind of weird way. So yeah, that was interesting to me. Now, I mean, the lore piece, we got to talk about this. JN, oh my gosh, totally entranced me. And Desrin, I'm sure you were mesmerized by this as well, at least by the voice of our lore master himself. There's way too much to break down here in terms of details, so I don't want to get into that here unless you want to. We can, but if you really want to go into deep dive with me for all the names and groups and factions that JN talked about, I'll be taking care of that in a future video for sure. But if you took out all the words, there's actually a massive reveal of graphical content that we hadn't seen before. Places, structures, just even new areas that previously hadn't been seen. And in fact, Minus referenced the G'day bandits that Jan talked about, and fondly sort of recalled the experience of fighting and pushing deeper into bandit territory when he played in a previous pre-alpha session. So, and of course, that footage is here on Pantheon Plus on our YouTube channel because we were given permission to show some of it. I'll link it in the description as well as roll it in the background of the video here, so folks can see, what he was referring to. So you also can get a direct comparison, of what some of these areas looked like when they were in gray box and now what they look like now. It's basically there for the taking, and honestly does. I had to look away from the screen to focus on Jan's words because I wanted to be able to talk about it on Pantheon Plus U, but I slipped a few times and I was drooling at the visuals on the screen. And my personal favorite site was seeing, the village of Avelia updated with the foliage and the new lighting and then the sort of the weather effects and the structures. It really looks great to me. Very different from what it once did. And so I loved what I saw, and I said this on one of the last shows we did where they showed off some of the HDRP graphics and stuff. I love how it looks. I think it really looks like a world that I could play in right now. But the video roll, what anything from that caught your eye? Any moment or two that really sort of caught your attention, I guess?
I think, well, first of all, I'm really glad this was like a continuous B-roll and not like a repeating 10 seconds. But I have to shout that out. It
was long. It was like 7.5 minutes.
Yeah. Right? And I'm sure that was a lot of work. So, clapping hands for that. That was awesome and very much noticed and appreciated. As far as things that stood out to me, probably the G'day fortress, the one that's kind of like built into the mountain. And just as they're flying through as well, all the little camps, they're everywhere. Like, as you know, I'm a huge fan of like open world content, and whether it's like a massive premier dungeon or even like kind of just small solo camps. So when I see little hints of that already in the world, in the state that it's in right now, and I can kind of just imagine that there's just going to be so many major and minor points of interest just everywhere, and that really excites me. Especially, because I have to throw the Vanguard word in, just to fulfill everyone's bingo card. But
yeah, everybody take a drink.
They were like masters of that. They have little camps everywhere, and you could very much see a duo or something just kind of hanging out at a little tiny camp, or several groups in a dungeon, and I really like that. I actually am not a huge fan of like all of the group content being dungeons, right? And so seeing little camps, little places that mobs can, be, or where maybe a couple people could just be, XPing kind of off in their own little corner. It's amazing. But honestly, man, it still looks kind of early to me graphically. Like, I super appreciate the progress that they're making. Don't get me wrong, but I can't really bring myself to like really praise the graphical quality quite yet. I can praise the progress, but it's just, I see the potential. But as we've brought up in the past, I still feel like overall we're still pretty far from like Project Fairthale level quality, right? And so, or even stuff before that in some ways. And so it's like, I have to commemorate the progress, and I loved seeing so much of Thronefast and Avendir's Pass and all that. Just especially being in PA, right? Getting to see some places that maybe we've seen before, updated. Obviously, smile on my face, but I do hope that there's a good bit more to go.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I really God, I'd jump in right now, and if it looked, it's just me. I know.
I'd jump in too. I would, but
no, I don't think you can. No, you've just ruled yourself out completely. You don't like it enough to jump in right now, Des. So I'm sorry,
no.
your invitation has been rescinded. No, man. Like, you're right though. Seeing the bulk of the content or the vastness of the content is really the main takeaway here. To me, it looks nice, nice enough for me at this point. But I know that they're not done, right? Yeah. So, you're right though. I mean, the content is really the main takeaway here, and it went really well with what they were taught, with what JN was saying. I think it just, it fit perfectly, his voice and just the way the lighting was showing the areas. That's super cool. So I actually am going to go back and listen to Minus's, 30-hour playtest story, and try and now integrate that story with some of these, images and visuals. So
that's awesome.
Anything else? Yeah, I'm looking forward to it actually. But anything else before we move on from the dev live stream, Des, that you wanted to talk about?
Well, okay, so like kind of quick hits, I guess. I think one of the biggest drops was info about the plans for NDA come alpha. I know we talked about this on the Plus U, but I know not everyone watches that. So again, kind of with the caveat that things can change. The general gist is they plan on very much relaxing the NDA for alpha, which would allow people to at least openly talk about it, but even potentially stream it. So I that's a huge drop.
Massive.
Absolutely. Massive. Speaking of massive drops, like there's boats. I know we probably don't have time to really get into it today, but like it almost was a fleeting thing. Like, oh yeah, by the way, there's boats. It wasn't that bad, but like, it was just like, man, they could have done an entire feature on that, right?
Yeah.
But that's exciting.
I don't know. Yeah, I have mixed thoughts on it. Like we talked about it on the show, but having again time to reflect on it. I kind of wish that they'd get the perception stuff done first before we dive into boats. But
I had that thought too. And I know some people are going to be like, feature creep, or whatever. Like, come on, everybody loves boats. Like, I think my only criticism there is that it was done in like the Q&A section, and really, I swear, guys, I do like these people, but a Q&A should never leave you with more questions.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, a good Q&A, answers some and opens up more questions. I don't know.
Man, but see, I feel like now I have questions about gliders. I have questions about boats. I have questions about so many things.
Let's be honest. You would have questions no matter what went down.
Fair enough.
You're just an inquisitive mind. You have a curious mind.
Fair enough. Well, I guess to wrap it up on my side, I kind of I get this feeling that in VR's like kind of communications or like the content side, it's like I kind of feel like they're spitballing a bit, just kind of trying new things, see what sticks. Especially as we have alpha still, however far out, they kind of can experiment. And in this case, like, well, honestly, there was a lot of information in this stream. I can't commend that enough, but I think the format didn't quite sit right for me, at least, and for a lot of other people too. There are definitely some high points, like, the lore section, obviously. And really, like, my list of things that were good is pretty long, actually. But honestly, I prefer something more akin to the last couple streams that we've had, with, they've got some big stuff in, and maybe a little sugar on top at the end, like that little nice surprise, the good old apple, but there's more. Like that feels good, right? And I think it's just something a little more professional about the previous streams that came off to me. And so to me, my whole goal is like, I want content that I feel totally comfortable sharing to other people. And I think that this is a stream that I'd happily share with our listeners who are already big fans of Pantheon, right? That'll laugh at the jokes and love the quirkiness, but I think it's kind of one that I would pass on showing to some kind of on the fence people or new people to the project, and that's really my biggest detractor is I think at least for the stream, since they're the biggest mouthpiece, they should probably stick to the more like professional stuff,
Yeah, well, you know what the thing is that I've seen some comments on both sides. I've seen people that said, I love this way, these segments are great, and this is a way better presentation. And I've seen folks say the opposite as well. So, it's just a matter of taste, I guess. And it's a matter of, how do you want your game to be seen? Do you want it to be seen, what tone, are you gonna, are you selling your game on, and I can get what you're saying with the tone, and, it's just creativity is sometimes doesn't land, as you think it's going to, other than the stuff we talked about at the beginning, other than that, I really don't have I don't care. I thought it was fine for me. I'd share it with people, I not just the people that we know in the community, the followers, the close followers, I would share it with other people because I think that humor is humor, right? It's just not everybody's taste sometimes, but, you got to have fun with it because, that's what we're here for. And we're in for a long haul. We've been here for a long haul. We're going to stay here for the long haul. And if you're not having fun with it, sometimes it can get a little bit, it can get a little bit hard to,
that's
keep
true.
Your
That's
expectations
true.
up.
Yeah, I think like how I would want to put it is I think this would have been a great Pantheon Plus video. but just not my preference.
It definitely
for
had that
VR.
flavor. It had that flavor with the voice filter. Definitely brought me back to some Pantheon Plus stuff that Minus and I did. So but we'll leave it there for the live stream review. What did you guys think? Leave a comment. Let us know. But we're also going to talk about the developer roundtable with Nefel, and this was all, like I said, about crafting. And there is tons of information here. So Des, I'm going to let you sort of take the lead here and start this discussion, and I'll chime in as you go along.
Okay, strap in everyone, because this is great. This is so much like good information. I just can't wait to blaze through this. And I'm going to iterate a few times and say, watch it. Yeah, I condensed everything down in our notes as best as I can, and still there's more meat on the bones if you want. But
if you're a crafter, this is like mandatory listening.
Yeah, totally, and hopefully we do it justice here. But yeah, so right off the bat, so Nefel did this kind of like little intro, like, hey, just before we get started, like let me say these things, which I think was great because it's been a while since we heard some crafting bits, right? But I just love one of the key focuses for crafting that Nefel just starts off with is it's going to be socially oriented, like not just something you do on your own. And as a foundational thing, isn't that like so Pantheon?
Well, he said, and I quoted him too, I wrote it in my notes too, is creates social value. And there was a forum post like years and years ago where he talked about this. He did such a good job of explaining it that time that I remember it all these years later because I was like, this is exactly what this is about. And this creates social value. It stuck with me so much that I was like, this is what the perception system needs to have. It needs to create social value. 100%. So as soon as he led with that, I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Let's go. So yeah, definitely, man.
Man. Well, on that foot, I kind of figured it might be a good idea to condense everything down and maybe give a general, like how crafting works on the rewind for our listeners, just to, because you really get kind of the whole picture from this podcast, but I'd like to kind of condense and hopefully help people understand everything. So let's start with kind of the basics, like choosing your profession. So you get two professions actually, and one of them is a non-consumable crafting profession. So that's going to be the blacksmith, outfitter, jewel crafter, and woodworker. And then you get your choice of a consumable crafting profession, which is the alchemist or provisioner. So I think this is a fair launch. This is a good spread, I think. And what it comes down to is you can actually, I would guess that you kind of have to, but you kind of specialize your general crafting class to hone in on what you're good at within that. So Nefel says you'd be extremely good at one thing, moderately good at other things, and then not the best at everything. And so the example that I'll cite here is you go from a woodworker and then you specialize into carving, and then you specialize that into boyery. So you're really good at making bows, let's say. But, people that branched out elsewhere. So I do kind of feel like we get more than just those, 6 crafting professions. Like it ends up being more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, at first it sounds limiting, but, when you understand the system that he's proposing, it actually becomes quite diverse and creates this real, mixture of different professions that are going to be out there because people are going to have different interests. And although you are limited to the one-on-one, I think it really it forces you to make a choice. And as we've said before, making choices like this in an MMO are what make it interesting when you have to make a choice and you can't just, all everything. Right?
Yeah, agreed. And that's kind of a going theme is that your choices matter in crafting, including what you pursue, what you invest your time into. But anyway, let's go through kind of the process of crafting. So for non-consumable items, as in weapons, armor, and bows, whatever. So this is the big kicker. So the recipe is actually something you find out in the world. They call them schematics. They also reference, like a cast, a pattern, a frame, but something they collectively call schematics. And the crazy thing about this is these recipes are limited use.
Well, here's the interesting part, and I'm not sure if you're doing it justice with the full explanation there, because so he was clear. I mean, he said there are really no recipes. They're doing away with the idea of a recipe. Now you could say a schematic is the same thing, but
yeah.
the way it works is you're not finding, like, the schematics are coming from weapons you find, right? So let's say I find a bow. Now it's got 3 schematics I can take from it, but those schematics are limited. Like, they're not inexhaustible. You only get 3. I'm just throwing that out there as a number. So they're like one-time use kind of things, right? So it's like having an item that has recipes inside it, but they're not like permanent. They're not permanent additions to your knowledge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I do.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this.
I do.
Is that not the?
So the process of getting schematics might be the one thing that I'm still a little fuzzy on, honestly.
Okay.
But one thing I do want to point out is that the amount of times they can be used can change, and he made sure to point that out. That there's probably common items that you could use the same schematic for several times, but it's more than likely that the really nice stuff is going to be like either single use or very, very short. But a couple important things about this is they are tradable, or at least that most of them should be.
Right.
And that VR can control the scarcity. And I thought this was actually a key point in, Nefel cited a lot of issues that crafting has had in other games. And one of them is the flooding of items. And if the developer doesn't want the flooding of that item, you can't just take the crafting class away from someone, right?
Right.
But VR can adjust how often people are getting these schematics. And so if there's something that is becoming way too prevalent, they can kind of pull that back if they feel like it hurts the economy or if it hurts the balance of the game. And I thought that was that's actually just so clever.
It is really clever, and it's something that I haven't seen in another MMO, and it's a fundamental difference between the idea of going out in the world and finding just recipes, and then you've got the recipe, whereas here, the thing is that the item has value because of not only the item and its stats or whatever it does for you and your fighting and your combat abilities, but it's got value because of the schematics that it contains or provides. So you're dealing with something that somebody might not want to give up their Uber sword, even though it's got these schematics that are highly valuable. Maybe it's more valuable to that person as a weapon than it is as a schematic source. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's the key takeaway here. And like, again, this is something that I haven't had firsthand experience. And, if you're listening to this and you've played an MMO that uses a system like this, let us know in the comments, because I think it's really interesting and to hear from other people about examples of real world application of this. And like I said, Nefel has got such a vast background with crafting, and he's cited his influences being like Star Wars Galaxies, I think is a big one, and a couple others, Vanguard. So right up your alley.
Yeah, I see little tidbits of it, but I see little bits of other games too, which is always good. But let's get a little bit deeper into like the rest of the process here, because not only are these schematics what we've described so far, but the difference in schematics you might get is vast. You can get different schematics for different regions, or from different factions, from different mobs or mob types. Or one really interesting thing he mentioned was like specific crafting content even. And not a lot of like clarity on exactly what that is yet, but it just seems like, the equivalent of things that an adventure for a crafter, And what I love about this is that each of these differences in schematics, it actually means something. It's not just flavor text. It changes the potential stats, and it changes the appearance. Heck yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think this came up in the context of like, regional recipes, because that was sort of the area he was talking about, I think, when he was talking about this. And he said, there will be differences between a thrown fast sword and one found somewhere else. If they're not, it may not be a major difference, but there will be differences, right? So faction comes into play, right? Faction's a big deal for crafters in Pantheon. He made that point several times. So I think it's an interesting way of differentiating, even at low levels, one crafter's items from another.
Yeah, and there's even more differentiation besides the schematic too, which we'll kind of get to. I did want to note here that it was confirmed that they aren't doing like a crafting like quality, like a grade A, grade B kind of a system.
Oh,
which,
thank God.
Yeah, that would be one of my biggest complaints with like Vanguard and some other games that may have had great crafting, but that particular thing was just really annoying because, no one wants the grade B, right?
Exactly. Like anything less than A++ becomes irrelevant so quickly.
Right. So I was just happy to hear that and get that clarified. But as far as the difference in items, so this is where it just gets absolutely insane. So so when you have a schematic, right? And it's not as simple as, hey, I have a schematic, I click button, I make, sword. Right. We'll probably just always use sword as an example, but
I prefer bow, but you can use sword. It's fine.
I think sword has more parts. Maybe I don't know, but
maybe your sword does. My bow is very part laden.
You've got those like Olympic archer, like all the attachments.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly, like 6 strings and 8 grips and like an aiming tool. Yeah, it's crazy.
So the main thing though is that there are going to be components for these items, and for the better items, you're going to have to rely on other people, because one thing that was noted was for simple items, you can craft kind of all the different components yourself. Like you're making a basic sword, you're not going to need to reach out to a bunch of different people just to make a basic sword. Like don't worry about that. But for the more special, the spicier, the more exotic things, you're really going to want to reach out. And there are so many factors into the end product here that it just makes me so excited. I think the example that I really appreciated was, hey, if you get a really nice schematic, you're not going to want to put like a basic sword blade. You're not going to want to put a basic, he referenced like a blade, a hilt, and a pommel. You're not going to just want to like waste that schematic with basic components. So he mentioned that you'd probably want to, maybe seek out a jewel crafter, get like a jeweled sword hilt. And, it's like, so you have the same schematic, but different outcome, right? Which is exciting in its own right. And not to mention, even when you're making these things, you can use different materials. So it's not even just like, oh, this has to be an iron sword blade. It's like, it's a metal sword blade, do with it what you will. And so, and not to mention even refining. He mentioned like refining is even another factor. And that could even involve a bit of cross discipline profession stuff, like getting alchemy ingredients for a smelting or things like that. And so, but all of these things together influence the final stats. And I think the appearance is probably dictated by the schematic, but definitely the stats of the item. And I love that. I love that they aren't doing a level tiering approach. Like, oh, this is my level 1 to 10, like bronze. Oh, this is 11 to 20. It's iron. Oh my gosh.
Right.
It's just you just craft things at whatever quality you can and get what you can out of it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the idea of the sort of open-ended approach to crafting here is really exciting, and it's not like you say, it's not locked into that bracket system of, this is your tier, you craft within this tier, and then you get to the next tier and you can craft there. It's like, no.
Yes, no. Especially when you consider the much looser item requirements for Pantheon, right? Because if you happen across like a really nice material, if you're like, let's say you're a big crafter, but you're just like not doing a lot of adventuring or something, and you happen across this and you can do something with it and make this insane weapon, like, it's not like, oh, well, since my crafter's level 50 and my character is level 10, I guess I just have to, wait. It's like, no, I found something special. I made something special. I'm going to use something special. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it becomes, I don't want to speak for other people, but when I find something like that in an MMO, it becomes all consuming for me that my quest is now to be able to use this and make this into something cool so that I can have something super cool. And if I can't, like if there's really no way, then I've got something valuable I can trade to somebody else or sell, or, it becomes valuable beyond the 1 to 10 range, or if I'm a low level, it becomes valuable to upper levels, to higher levels.
Yeah. And I love that you said quest too, because that's the really like emergent thing about this whole system is if you happen to be out and you find this rare harvestable, it's so exciting because it's like, that's the start of a journey. Like, many kind of motifs from various shows and movies about, making the sword or whatever after you find, I'm thinking of Avatar: Last Airbender, Sokka with the meteor, right? A meteor sword.
Yep.
But that's like legit what I'm imagining is exactly that kind of a journey to put in a lot. It would completely change my trajectory of my character. Like I think I would also be very focused on it. Be like, oh my gosh, I got this thing. I have to do something.
Yep. For sure.
But
For sure.
Oh yeah, the process though. So this was another big clarifying thing. So he was hesitant to say mini game. So he's calling this a challenge. So there is a challenge associated to the process of crafting. So without very specific things, it sounds like more of a puzzle, or challenge is a good enough word, right? And they're going to make sure that there are different methods for different types of crafting, which is awesome. So, if you're smelting, ore versus like whittling, on a bow or a stave or something, it's like those are going to feel different, which I think is important. And here's the big drop. If you fail, there is a chance that you will lose some of the materials. How do you feel about that?
As it should be. As it should be. There's risk involved in everything. And I have no problem with that. And I wasn't surprised by that at all. But that just seems like an obvious thing to me. I want to go back to what you were saying a second ago, what the how the mechanics actually work. The way that I heard it and from Nefel saying is like, you can basically choose what resource you want to use while crafting. Like the way he described it, and maybe I misinterpreted, but he said basically like there's going to be some different methods that offer you resource options in terms of trade-offs. Like, okay, I can craft this and I can use endurance, or I can craft this and use mana, or I can craft this and use maybe even my health as a resource. So, how do I want to fund my crafting or gathering, right? Like, I think that's really kind of an interesting idea, right? Because some classes and some races maybe will have more, bigger pools, bigger, more options in that regard. So,
oh man, it kind of reminds me of being in EQ2 in the early days when you like accidentally hit the wrong button and your character like takes half of their health and damage.
Oh man, yeah. Oh, I can see that. I can see the little icons from it, like
Yep.
Massive miscalculation, I think was one of them, or something like that, and it's like poof, it just blows up.
Oh man, but yeah, I mean it's super exciting. The process I think matters, because it is the thing you're going to be doing over and over again, so it needs to be interesting and mean something. Now, a few additional extras that I thought were great. There will at least be crafting tools, but hopefully gear in general, which again, Vanguard, I love my separate sets of clothing.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, let's really quick just jump on the consumables side, because I know I'm dwelling here because I just love this so much. But consumables are like, and this is cooking and alchemy, or alchemy and provisioning. And it sounds so freeform. It literally sounds like straight from the things that I love about Mortal Online 2's crafting, which is, well, first of all, there's no schematics for consumables. You just have like a tool. And the example he uses is a frying pan. And basically you just throw stuff in the frying pan. and what you get out is based on what you throw in. And come on, like that's too fun, man.
I feel like I'm gonna in post throw in the sound that it plays in Breath of the Wild when you're cooking up some meals in Breath of the Wild. Because it's a very recognizable sound, and it's exactly what it makes me think of here. So maybe I'll do that.
That's so perfect. I always think of, I can't remember which Monster Hunter, but the one I played on PSP had a very, when you roast the meat, a mini game that had a very, very great sounds associated. Maybe there's one person in our audience who knows what I'm talking about. But also, I think this was a really important note. Nefel wants to have a kind of crafting logbook, just to reference the things that you've crafted in the past. I think this is really important, man, because this could get really hard to keep track of really fast.
Yeah.
I love spreadsheets,
true, yeah.
but I don't want to be spreadsheeting everything.
I know, me neither. Yeah, definitely for this like open kind of system where it's like mix and match the consumables. So what does an acorn, an apple and a whatever pine cone make, right? So
yeah,
I need to know that because I'm not going to remember
exactly.
it. So.
Exactly. Well, let's touch on this one last thing, and I think we'll probably skip the bits about harvesting for now and just say go watch it or listen to it, because there's a lot of really solid things about harvesting. But here's a big takeaway for me on the crafting thing is that factions are supposed to be a huge deal for crafters. Like this sounds like a part of your progression, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It was interesting because, and especially in the context of what we just saw from the dev stream, talking about factions in Thronefest. So, if you've been killing a bunch of Gadai bandits, and you're a crafter, how does that impact you? What does that mean? I think that tying it into the lore, everything that ties into the lore and serves the interconnectedness of the game is a good thing. Right. So
yeah, and
no problem with that whatsoever.
Neff really confirmed that too. I mean, he said he works with JN quite a lot to make sure that everything ties together. I love it, and it also just means that it's another differentiator, right? If you get to crafting end game, Like, even if you have the exact same specializations as someone else, you might have completely different, faction setups. So I love anything like this, man. Like, if you find someone that has actually befriended the Gadai, and maybe they have access to a specific schematic that they can get, like, that is going to be awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So,
right. I want to be a Fairthale bowyer.
Absolutely.
Bow maker, because that's where I'm going to be living, and that's what I'm going to be interacting with and working on my faction most likely with them. And, and so if that means I can make a specific, elven bow and it limits me in that regard, that's fine. I'll take that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm so excited. I think I'll throw one last little thing in here. And just to note that full-time crafting is possible, but again, it's going to rely on other players. I think that's the common theme, right? Is if you go really into crafting, it's a social thing. It's a social profession.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of something more appropriate for Pantheon.
Agreed. Well, it's like you said, and that's like we said at the start, creating social value, and all these choices that you have to make as a crafter, that's the formula for social value.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little bit remiss to skip everything else here, but in the interest of time and making sure that our listeners don't get another episode 100 sized show, let's wrap this one up. So definitely go check out the developer roundtable with Nefel on crafting and gathering. It's on Pantheon's main channel. And give this a listen. It's super worth it.
For sure. So we'll just quickly go over what we're doing here at Pantheon Plus. We're always up to something. We got our next, got some big fan community events, sort of in the thinking about stages. We've got some content that I already talked about. I referenced a little earlier in the show that I'm working on. We have a major revamp to one of our mainstay items, and I'm not going to do any spoilers here because it's in the very initial stages, but Desrin, this is going to be your focus. I know you're super excited about this, and when the time comes, you'll fill us in on what you're working on, right?
Yeah, man. I am very excited about this, to be real. And I want to point out though, and because I'm not a huge fan of teasing, honestly. In this case, I think it's almost too early to tease, but I'm just excited. So you guys get it anyway. But I will note that it is just starting, and it's probably going to be a long time. But just know that we have a really, really big thing in store, and when we can start sharing, I think it's going to be a major Pantheon resource. How about that?
There you go.
There we go.
Perfect. Exactly. That's exactly well said. And I mentioned content, and it's kind of funny. VR is talking about boats and sea travel, and we're taking a little inspiration from that. We're coming up with something to make those long sea voyages a little more jaunty, let's just say. So we have some musical talent in our stable of Pantheon Plus creatives over here. So stay tuned for that, because those are always fun. And then lastly, let's look at the Pantheon Plus calendar here. And I'm going to actually cheat for 1 second because I didn't put the image in my notes, but I'm going to go over to our Discord and let you know that on Friday, Sparrow's playing P99 at 6:30 Eastern. And then, of course, on Wednesday, she's also streaming her Lord of the Rings online. Usual Wednesday stream. The big ticket item here is Crowsinger is releasing the final chapter of In the Sway of Storms next week. Though we don't know exactly what day, but it's going to be one of the days next week. So make sure you're checking out pantheon.plus to see when her final chapter goes up. It's been 1 year since chapter 1 went up.
So
which is
perfect.
Absolutely crazy. Yeah. So congrats, Crow. Like, you are the preeminent, fan fiction author in our community. And I say that knowing Ben and I is a master of his work too. And there are many others who are excellent writers, but you are the queen of fan fiction for sure. And all the congrats in the world to you on finishing that epic tale. So let's leave it there with this week's VR news and notes.
The Pantheon community is full of cool projects, new people, and things that are just worth sharing. What's this over here? Look at that. So let's see what we can find in this week's Community Spotlight. All right, guys, let's hit a really quick community spotlight here. I just have a few things, but a few great things. As was just a bit ago mentioned, Crowsinger is coming up on the final chapter, but she did release In the Sway of Storms chapter 22, which would be the penultimate chapter to Pantheon.plus. So if you're keeping up with that, the excitement grows for the final chapter. And I think I've said this before, but I'm excited just because I have been waiting on this story to conclude because I'm a bit of a binge reader. And so I haven't read thoroughly through much, if at all, of the previous chapters. So I'm going to binge this as soon as it's all released together. But definitely check out chapter 22. We've got videos. So Bazgrim put together a great wrap-up of the gathering side of things for Pantheon in a YouTube video called Intro to Gathering in Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen. It's what you would expect from Bazgrim. It's great. It's
informative, clear. Yep, definitely a good one.
There you go. And I'm actually really happy about this one. So there's one I almost missed, and I feel really bad, but I'm glad I caught it in time. And this was from RhysInRevelry. This was a little while ago, but he put out a video called Braving the Ascent in Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen. And this is in response to the last dev stream, but man, this was a great video. Like the quality of his YouTube videos is really going up. And I love seeing people like get better at their craft, right? But
yeah, totally. I haven't watched this one yet. I have to go back and check it out because it was one that slipped under my radar. So I definitely will.
Yeah. So the general premise, just so people know, and I hopefully get them interested, is so it's not just like covering the Daedrum Ascent stuff, but it's actually his own script, his own take, and really well put together, like B-roll to match everything, his own thoughts, that go into it. And it's, nice. Narrated and everything. I think this is a great style of content, and I'm so happy to see it. So great job, Rhys.
Yeah. Great job, man. Really, really nice.
And that's actually going to be it for this 2 weeks community spotlight. So get your content flowing again so I can start filling up this section. But I think it's time we move on to something a little more lore-worthy.
Sit back and relax. It's time for the lore you know. Yes, it is. So on the developer stream, the politics of the Thronefast region kind of took center stage from JN. He talked about the days of House Seville through to the rule of Queen Ementhiel. And we learned of the many nobles that have had an impact on the region. But, this is the humans' home, and we need to know where it all began. What's their history? So today, we'll start to learn the origin story of our fantasy counterparts in Pantheon, the humans. So listen along as I read the words of our fantasy wordsmith, J.N. Gerhardt, in this week's lore segment. Since the dawn of Thronefast, 5 centuries ago, humans have stood at the pinnacle of influence, surviving threats against their walls, and those from within. True power speaks not a word, yet its presence is deafening. The city of Thronefast has been that presence for the humans for nearly 500 years, and to know their heights of power is to behold the capital, a breathtaking jewel in the light of dawn. The breadth of their influence is glimpsed in the majestic navy, unrivaled on the open waters. Students and masters of nearly every art and discipline, humans' middle-rung size and strength is perhaps a lone mediocrity, their oft flamboyant pride not withering before kings, ghouls, or dragons. Of all the multitudes scattered across Terminus, no other group has been so defined, aided, and threatened by their leaders as the humans. When first arriving on the continent that became Kingsreach, the frail colony was helpless, under a winter so stark it was called cursed. Only by heavy reliance upon the nearby elves of Faerthel did they outlast the tempest. Yet, in the thaws of spring, human King Amensal rallied his people to found a city all their own, Havensong. Settled in a forest at the base of the Rhone Mountains, the town was a jewel of dedicated effort, born from a people unified by their harrows and trials. That very year, Amensol and his queen welcomed their firstborn son, Avendir, as heir, and the fate of the race was aimed to soar. Yet less than 25 years later, the humans were facing extinction. 7 years into the Deicide War, the ravaging Lord of the Revenant permitted one of the humans' former gods, Osari, rain down upon Havensong every nightmare of war his armies possessed. The undermanned city endured a 3-week siege, and King Amensol was cast among the corpses of his soldiers, slain by Osari the Betrayer himself. The High Mortal's fury culminated in having every sundered shred of the ruined city carried to the cliffs of Raloon and thrown into the churning seas below. The young King Avendir spent his first night as king, shepherding survivors back to the Silent Sanctum in the belly of the Rhones, not stopping for the dawn or to grieve. And that is the lore you know. So, we are done, episode 101. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us today. And Desrin, I know we started off with a flurry of opinions and strong thoughts, and I hope everybody stuck with us through our emotional working through things. But that is how it goes around here, where we're going to be honest with you and tell you how we actually feel about things. And we hope that everybody enjoyed the show today. Desrin, are you okay? Are you feeling good about?
I'm feeling
about
really
where we're
good, and I got to remind folks, I really do want to hear what you guys think. Not even just of the more touchy bits or polarizing things, but how did you like crafting? Did you really enjoy Jane's segment on the lore, et cetera, et cetera? Like, let us know. It's always great to read. This is all of us together. In fact, it's not just me and Theric. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And every bit of engagement that you guys, guys and girls and everybody out there does with our content means so much to us. So I really want to, express my gratitude for that. And we are going strong. We are back after our 2-week break and our 1-week break in episode 100 and on to the next episode, 100th episode. So looking forward to that. But as we always do, thanks for joining us, and make sure to like, subscribe, and all that stuff. And we will see you back here, same time, same place next week for episode 102. So until then, cheers.
Farewell.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and Desrin at DesrinDoes also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.